Welcome back to a very late night episode of Animal Crossing New Horizons, hence me whispering very quietly, because it's 1 a.m. and I only just got back from essentially celebrating a friend's birthday, where I can now reveal, I'm not going to talk about it in this episode, I'll talk about it more tomorrow's episode when I can take some time to digest and sort of break it down, but essentially, for a friend's birthday, we had a secret project where me and a few friends were getting together to essentially make a Pokemon game. Not a full Pokemon game, mind you. It was more like a Pokemon boss rush, a gym leader rush, where we had like 18 other friends all together. Each one of us were a different gym type gym leader, and we just designed levels and things around it. But anyway, good evening everyone. I'm here with a late night broadcast. I hope I can make it through this. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 1:01 a.m. on Friday, December 6th, 2024. But yeah, I'll talk about it more tomorrow, like the process behind it. It really was genuinely a fun time. Very different, I think, for me as well, working on these projects, because I think basically in previous projects, depending on what the project was, I might have done like a lot of the manual work for it, or I didn't have much of a part in the actual thing, because that tends to be how I work. But this one, it was really like I did not do a lot, most of the manual work that was done by 3 of my friends. If anything, I was a sort of like a liaison between them, like I hesitate to say director because I think it gives me more importance than it actually was, but like most of the manual work I did was basically just some battle sprites and overworld sprites, which is fine, I don't see it as a bad thing, but it was so interesting to be able to be like, alright, this part I fully leave up to you, I trust you, this is like your direction, this is what I'm expecting, and then just seeing what happens at the end from it. It genuinely was really cool. I really loved the experience. My friends are still talking about it in the chat, which, is awesome. Like, because the thing I said is that maybe, like, let's try and, if you're willing to, finish up, like, tidying up some of the things here and there, But okay, so. I guess I'll talk about it today and tomorrow. Like tomorrow I'll talk more about the development process. Today is more of a reaction to it. But yeah, it was, you might say it's a bit crazy that I have 18 friends, all of which would be willing to participate to be a Pokemon gym leader. And I'd say it's much more crazy that even I have, 18 good friends, of which I can do that, and each of them can contribute something in their own way, I guess, but also that I have 3 very close friends who were willing to contribute so much to actually making the project in the first place, and it's really cool to see that people got like pretty involved of it in the end. But yeah, it was basically a parody, sort of not parody Pokemon game, it was basically our version of a Pokemon game where each of us were a different gym leader, and then like the birthday boy, he was the main character and also a gym leader, to be fair, and he would just go around and defeating them all. And it was genuinely crazy because the last like update I pushed to it yesterday at like 3 a.m, which was fixing a soft lock I found everything, and I was just like not sweating the entire time, but just like during the entire thing being like, I really hope we don't run into a soft lock while playing the game. And amazingly, for our 18 gym matches, the first 17 had no bugs that I could see. Like, the only bugs would be like small graphical bugs, like something was on the wrong layer or whatever, that had no effect on gameplay. And it was only on the 18th gym where something broke, and it wasn't even that crazy. We could fix it like very quickly. I actually fixed it wrong, mind me, and I fully admit that. But also, to be fair, I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes on that one, which was what gives me what I thought was such an interesting perspective. Because essentially, like, the work was divvied up. Like 2 of them like did a lot of like scripting, like work and level assembly and that sort of thing, and I had like no part of it whatsoever. So really, I had no idea basically what was going on. I didn't know how they set up really any of it behind the scenes, and it was really interesting to see that, because that was one of the ones where it went wrong, and I was like, oh god, I have no idea how it works behind the scenes. But then they very, very quickly spotted what the bug was, and I was like, okay, let's do it. And yeah, I say I fixed it wrong because I did fix it wrong. It was I misinterpreted one of the instructions, but luckily that fix didn't actually break really that much. It broke it in the sense that like we couldn't see the cutscene, but like whatever. Luckily it was one of a milder cutscenes, so it wasn't a huge devastating loss, in my it was just really cool that we got to the end. And then, oh yeah, there was a final bug of the secret boss, which is to be expected because it was a secret boss I added like very later on to the thing, and I did not like playtest it like at all. Only in passing. So it was just like it's a little niche thing where I was like, oh, you basically get teleported to the final boss, and I didn't think about the fact that you can't heal your Pokemon before then, and also is a very interesting thing about apparently when you lose the boss it counts as a win. So I was like, okay, you know what, fair enough, because it was getting very late and we all wanted to sort of wrap it up, so I'm glad we did. But what other cool things happened? It was very down to a wire, I think, as well, because it was only last night when I was playtesting it like for the final time at like 3 AM, I was like, oh crap, this game is like really, really difficult, like this is way too difficult and I have no idea why. So I ended up like changing it a bit by like, initially I just gave him like set Pokemon, and I was like, okay, just give like way more stronger Pokemon just so he has a choice of things to choose and use, because a lot and I guess I am talking about it today as well, but there's a lot to talk about, I suppose. So this is more just like from reactions from what actually happened. And when he was playing, he was just like, oh, we're going to do something where I'm going to basically drop one of my Pokemon every single time I win a boss battle. And I was like, okay, this game was like surprisingly challenging. When you don't do that, it's going to be even more challenging if you do that. And to be honest, which led to some really cool moments where some of it was like really had to be like calculated out exactly the strategies that came up. There were a lot of people in call, wisdom of a crowds all coming together to be like, this is like your only way forward, this is what you can do. I thought that was very cool, and like I'm glad my friends had a fun time with that. But yeah, it turns out that it ended up being so difficult, because when I was playtesting it I was like, I'm surprised how difficult this is, but I thought it was difficult because like at the time when I was doing it I wasn't changing moves, because I didn't put the move teacher in, and I also didn't know that you could change it in just in a regular menu screen. I was like, whoa, okay, that changes everything. So I was like, that's probably why it's difficult. No, it turns out by default Pokemon Essentials, which is the engine we ended up using to make this parody Pokemon game, sets IVs and EVs default to like a maximum if you don't specify them for enemies. So, but the way I was adding them to the main characters party meant that they weren't getting like IVs or EVs. So really you were playing at like a huge stat deficit, and I was like, oh, when I read that I was like, oh man, no wonder, that explains so much. Because I knew something was wrong when I was playtesting it, except for I was like, I don't know what's wrong, and I don't have nearly enough time to try and figure out what's going on and why it's wrong. But that explains a lot, to be honest, so it's a good thing that's been caught. Yeah. What else was I going to say about it? What else was particularly cool? Yeah, the thing, and it was interesting as well, because there was boss battles or the gym battles that I had during it, which I thought were very difficult, because the difficulty came from the fact that I couldn't change my moves. I had like really weak moves or something like that. I also didn't have, I guess, the wisdom of the crowds, so I didn't necessarily know which way round could have been the best way to do something. So yeah, but ended up being like rather easy when he played it. I mean, things which I found were like super easy ended up being rather difficult because of his own self-imposed challenge of dropping a Pokemon every single time he did it. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's one of the better, like the closest feelings I had to seeing like something that you put like genuinely a lot of work into sort of come to life. If anything, I imagine that must be how a lot of creators feel when they see that sort of pride of creation like on the screen. Like, oh, this is the first like major thing like you directed, you wrote, you participated on or something, and seeing it on the big screen being performed just makes you go, oh yes, makes you emotional. Well, except I'm a bit more of a robot, so it didn't make me as emotional, but definitely had that sort of sense of pride as it was going on. Yeah, but now I need to go back to recording, and finally that's something I don't need to do like each night, so maybe I can go back to like drawing stuff as well. I've got D&D session tomorrow. I don't have a Talos Principle episode recorded for tomorrow, so I'm going to be recording that probably after this, again in whisper mode. else to go with this, to be honest. Either I'll just record it tomorrow. No, I'll probably record it tomorrow morning or something instead. I think it's a silly effort to try and sort of record a Talos Principle episode today when it's like 1 AM. I haven't even played like my games for today really, so I need to do that. But yeah, seeing it all come together and seeing everyone have like a really good time. Like there's a lot of it where it's just like, oh, these last minute decisions like really like saved the game. Like the fact I gave him a load of Pokemon really saved it, because it would have been essentially impossible without it. And not checking the IV EVs things, it did occur to me at some point being like, I wonder if I should set the IVs and EVs to the Pokemon, and I was like, oh, you know, I won't do that because that'll make it too difficult. So then I know it already sets them automatically, because I guess I definitely should have checked in retrospect, but at the time I was doing it I was like, oh, it must set them to default by 0, because why would you set them to not default by 0? That seems crazy to me. But you know, I'm sure there's a good reason for it, to be honest. But yeah, what else was genuinely really cool? Advent calendar, what's going on Neopets? Is it a void? It is a void, I guess. Coming together. Let's see, there's a lot of conversation about it. Chat here. Yeah, I don't know what else I was going to say about this, to be honest. I want to talk about more of the dev stuff tomorrow, so I'm just trying to think of more of the reaction stuff from today. But some Pokemon challenges ended up being like a sleeper difficulty. Like, but there were two gyms which I found very difficult when I was playtesting. One of them being the Ice Gym. I don't really remember why I found it difficult, but probably something to do with the fact that I played it very late, and my own gym, which is the Fairy Gym, I found surprisingly difficult because my Primarina kept sweeping me. But I also think because I wasn't changing out any of the moves, I was like, oh, you know, that's probably why. I didn't have any moves which could end up like actually defeating it, so I just got kind of swept through. There was a lot to learn from it as well. Because when it came to actually designing the combat, I would basically just like looked at the move lists and was like, what seems reasonable, what seems like kind of good, because I was like, I don't like, this is a computer controlling it, like surely it's not going to be that strong in my mind. So I was like, I think it's fine if it has a reasonably strong moveset. So I was like, okay, I'll give it like one type, I'll give it 2 different types of damaging moves, and maybe a third one if it feels like it's more of a DPS, and then something like different entirely. And otherwise, if I can think of like a funny sort of moveset, I would give it a funny moveset. Like one of the movesets I ended up giving was like a Spikes and Whirlwind Pokemon. So it would just like constantly bring out your Pokemon onto spikes, and it was a very bulky Togekiss and it had Roost, and that's what I remember doing. So if I could give it a funny thing like that, but then some of it ended up being like way too difficult, like unintentionally. So I was like, oh, I did not intend for this to be as difficult as it did. One of them being like a Metagross, which was in the Steel Gym, which just ended up sweeping the birthday person's team, mainly because it was one of the last gym battles he did, to be fair. So that also contributed by the fact that he had nothing that could really like stand up to it left. But yeah, I'm just glad it's done. I'm just glad that time's freed up, to be honest, and it's now something which needs to be committed to, I don't know, doing other stuff again. It's been a bit of an all-consuming birthday project, of course, but I'm glad it's done in the best way possible. Yeah, so I guess tomorrow morning is when I'll record a Talos Principle episode or something. Or I could do it tomorrow, like in the evening, just before D&D. That's true as well, I didn't think about that. But yeah, I don't know what else I was going to say. There we go. I can finally talk about something I've been working on for a long time. It's late. I'm gonna have a 15-minute episode, and I see no reason to commit to the full 20 minutes today. So I don't know what I spoke about today, but tomorrow you can hear the full details about the motivation behind things, the talking about things, and the ideation. Almost like a mini dev blog. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.